I can't even look at the guitar. I mean, it's just, it is what it is. But, yeah, I mean, difficult making a living in music, man. Jeez, this could be like a 5-hour conversation if you really want to go into that. If I could go play with where I'm at, if I could go, my goals these days are more like if I could go and play in 30 markets around the country to 250 people a night, I'd be over the moon. Without a doubt, it's the opportunity to connect with another person. I think that's probably the main reason I play it outside of what it does for me. And to be able to reach out to somebody else and connect with them and offer them something that hopefully is helpful in some way, that's about the best thing I think you could ever hope to accomplish as a human being. The very first thing I ever learned to play was piano, and I started playing when I was right around 5. So that was the very beginning, pretty early. And I started writing songs, I guess it's been probably around 15 or 16 years ago now. Yeah, I mean, I'd have to thank my cousin who basically gave me my first couple of lessons on the guitar when I was the very first time I ever picked one up. Without him, I don't know if I would have gotten rolling the same way, because he taught me some pretty cool things. He also got the seed planted in my head that I should take a few lessons from an actual teacher, because I looked up to him at that time because he was a pretty good player. And he said that was taking lessons and doing a little bit more, at least a little bit more of a formal approach, was something he wished he had done. And I took that to heart and did it. And I don't know if I'd be sitting here talking to you doing all the stuff I'm doing without that initial catalyst. But aside from him, I've got a couple other friends that, especially early on, like when I was first starting to write songs and go out and sing them, they were people that I looked up to for their musical tastes and also for their taste in film, just I guess their overall just taste in art, whether it was written material, whether it was film, whether it was visual art, whether it was music. And I really respected them, and they came to me very early on and really were supportive of what I was doing at a time when it was very fragile, and I was definitely full of plenty of, I was full of no confidence at the time, and a lot of question marks, and they helped me to knock a lot of those question marks out of the way and kind of gain my confidence at that time, and that was monumental. I mean, those early years when you don't really know what you're doing and don't even know if you should be doing it, it's a precious time. So to be treated like that by those particular people was very, very, very important, and something I think about still pretty much every day on some level. Well, I mean, in some cases, like someone like Eddie Van Halen, who I'm a massive fan of, and probably the main reason why I have a guitar in my hands, I take away just a tremendous amount of, what's the right word, I guess, freedom to experiment. If I put on one of the early Van Halen records, I almost always have to sit down after listening to that and play music and try to write something, because it just inspires me to be creative. But then there's guys that are more directly influential as songwriters. Like I'm a huge Springsteen fan. His ability to tell a story and the way he uses details to show something and to show a story as opposed to tell it to you. It's almost like he writes little screenplays that are set to music. And I'm someone that can definitely struggle with using way too many words and being incredibly verbose. And I've had to really challenge myself to carve that down and make things tighter over the years I've been writing songs. And I've definitely used like a record like Nebraska and a record like Darkness on the Edge of Town to learn how to do that. Just to see like what is it that he's doing in these 3 lines that makes you feel that and puts you in that place. And again, it comes down to the details, I think, more than anything. There's that line in if you know the Nebraska record at all, called a song called "Used Cars." And there's a line in that, or a little couplet. It's like, my ma, she fingers her wedding band as a salesman watches my old man's hands. It's like that puts all kinds of things in place just with those couple of lines. So to take that influence and then try to apply it to what I'm trying to do. And then, you could take another kind of a songwriter like somebody like Dylan. He just would juxtapose all kinds of crazy things together to create these worlds and places for you to go in your mind. And it's not as much of like that storytelling of the Springsteen sort of model, more of like that screenplay. I mean, he still uses details, don't get me wrong, but it's almost like he mismatches all these different worlds together and creates this whole other patchwork. And I mean, you can't really do it like him, and the point's not to try to be like him, but it just pushes me to try to break outside of the molds and any of the cliches or familiar things that I find myself doing. Somebody like Tom Waits, he's kind of everything. I mean, he's musically breaking all kinds of boundaries, lyrically doing all kinds of interesting things and crazy characters, but also making some pretty powerful statements, like socially, on a social conscious level, or social consciousness level. So, those are guys that it's much more bigger picture things, as opposed to, I don't personally look at influences as I'm trying to sound like that person. It's more like, what is that guy doing? And then I also like to look at who their influences were and go and see what they were doing. Like with Dylan, if you don't know who Woody Guthrie is, then you're not a real Dylan fan, because Dylan wouldn't exist without him, and he'd be the first one probably to tell you that. He was a massive influence on him. And to go and look at where those guys get, their ideas from, and then see how it trickles through them, and then you take not just them, but you take their influences, and all of that comes at you, and it's a lot of things you can spend some real time on and do some real homework with to learn your craft. At one point, I think you had asked me a question about American Darkness, and you were like, what is American Darkness? I was like, well, here's the thing. I don't want to answer that question, because then everybody that hears this, whether they want to or not, that will infiltrate their own thoughts. And I think I told you, it was like, it'd be like if you went to Bob Dylan and asked him, what's the blood on the tracks? He probably wouldn't even respond. Well, I'll answer that part B, because I can't just say one song, because every day it's something different. The mood I'm in, there's something that I might gravitate towards more than something else. But there are definitely songs that I really enjoy playing, because I feel like what I do as a solo performer is pretty well encapsulated in those songs and those arrangements. So I almost could stand on stage and play one or two of those, and if you'd never seen me play before, you'd get a pretty good idea of sort of like the range of what it is that I'm after and where I'm coming from. I don't know if you would say like it has my trademark on it, but it would be something of that like. There's a song called The Truce that I put out, I wrote it a long time ago, but it came out on a record called Death in the Valley that came out in 2014. And the way I play it live is very different. On the record, it was with a full band and a little different kind of an arrangement. General format's the same, but dynamically things are a lot different when I'm playing solo. And there's another song off my first record called Rock On that has turned into what I use it almost 95% of the time to close shows with. And that one's really, really fun to play. But those are pretty unique songs, and what goes on with them, there's a lot of guitar playing involved that I can get into that isn't always appropriate on other stuff. And there's things on piano that I play as well that I would say are high up on the list. As I mentioned, I started playing piano when I was really young. Whenever I sit at that instrument, it's really natural for me, because it's just been a part of my life for so long. But probably those songs, I would probably say that The Truce or Rock On, those two, not necessarily because they're my favorite songs at all given times, but just in terms of performance, I feel like I could play those two and walk off stage, and if that's all I had that I could do that night, just 10 minutes, I'd be happy with that. Yeah, I mean, I get a lot of snippets of ideas when I'm driving. Definitely written, the majority of various songs just riding in the car in terms of a lyrical thing, and sometimes also musically I'll have an idea and I can think in my head kind of how that moves and what chords might go with it, and then when I'm not driving and pick up a guitar or sit at the piano, I can figure it out pretty quick. But I think driving around and the things you see, like street names, names of buildings, names of towns, all that stuff ends up turning into like song titles and names for characters and things like that. And the people you meet when you're traveling. I mean, definitely a lot of inspiration comes from those moments, if not the actual act of writing. But I think I'm not the type of person that sits down every day and the clock hits 8 a.m. and I'm like, I got 3 hours to knock a song off. I used to be a little bit more like that. And maybe just because life's a little bit more complicated now than it used to be, I can't be quite as rigid with those times. But at home is where I do the predominant amount of my writing, for sure. I have a writing room at home that I can go into, and it's sort of in my own space. And I've got a lot of pictures of people who are influences, and just not just people, but places and things that tend to get my brain going. And I think for me also, I don't tend to write in the moment of an emotional experience as much as I do kind of as a reaction to it. I think a lot of writing is like a distilling of ideas and thoughts and emotions and things that you're trying to sort out. Some people could describe it as a form of almost like meditation. And so after you go through something, good or bad, there's like a period for me where that all sort of sets in and I absorb it and wrestle around with it. And then after that, oftentimes things will start coming out. And if I'm lucky, they'll start coming out in a decent pace. And that's oftentimes where the seeds of an album will come from, because you get a few songs that sort of make sense and they kind of show you where to go, as opposed to sitting down and me saying, I'm going to write 10 songs for a record starting on Monday, and it's going to be done a week from Friday, and just try to knock out a song a day. Like that doesn't, for me, it doesn't work. I know people that write that way, and there's definitely a part of me that's a little jealous of having that mechanical nature and feeling like you can get up every day and turn that on, but it's just not how it rolls for me. And every time I try to do that, it just ends up turning out pretty bad. So I've learned to not fight it and just accept it for what it is.
Well, I used to drink too much, take my chances, stay in between the lines, and stay true for glances. There was a coat I wore, well, that was before you were born. Yeah, that was before you were born. And many people been killed for the color of skin, told who to love and what they felt was a sin, clipped like a thorn. That was before you were born. That was before you were born. The darkness of our past now stretches out under the moon. We've been lost in our own hometown, on the streets we swore we knew. Struggling to keep warm. Well, that was before you were born. And to watch her fight the pain on that early morning, to hear your first cry, nobody gave me warning I could love something more. Well, that was before you were born. 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 Heartless, and you won't get jammed by the American darkness.